Hello, computer scientists and cybersecurity professionals. Mr. Lang here, and in this lab, we're going to set up two different computer labs. And I kind of mirrored them, or the names of them, after some labs that we have here at Gull Lake High School. And we're going to build onto this, but right now it's just a simple computer lab. Our computer lab over here on the left is going to have switch, and we're in lab 2211. So switch 2211, we have it named accordingly. And then we have four PCs from PC 2211, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Over here on the right hand side, we have lab 2213, so we have switch 2213, and PC 2213, 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, and we're going to configure our switches with security features. We're also going to set all of our end and intermediary devices with IP addresses so we can communicate with different devices in the lab. So a couple tools that we're going to use for this lab is, one of them is going to be Packet Tracer that I just demonstrated. Another one is our OneNote with all of our notes that we have from previous labs, so we can learn and keep that in our toolbox. We also have our KeyPass. Whenever IT professionals start designing a lab and working on the topology, they need to keep track of all the different hardware, whether it's an intermediary device, what cabling that they use, and what the end devices are, their IP addresses, some of the configuration settings and stuff like that, all within a document. And we're going to use KeyPass for that. And when we're done with setting up our lab, we're also going to make a backup because it's so important if things happen to our computer to be able to have a backup to be able to get into those devices. So we're going to go through that all together, so bear with me here. A couple first things that I did was in my Cisco Net Academy, I right-clicked and chose Add a Group, and I created a group called Gull Lake Computer Labs. Inside of there, I added another group called Lab 2211 and another lab in here, right-click, Add Group for 2213. Inside of 2211, I went and made some of our IP addresses that I'm going to assign to them, as well as what our switch console line passwords will be, our privilege exec password will be, and our switch IP address will be. So I kind of made this before I configure my PCs, so that way I know what to name them. In my lab 2213, I have done the same. I just switched up a little bit of their IP addresses, so they're not the same as PCs in lab 2211. Again, I made those up before I start to configure my lab, and again, just to have record of these. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. We'll come back to that in a second. One of the first things that I want to do is configure our switches and secure them. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my switch, and I'm going to actually, let me adjust my screen here with my notes over here on the right and my switch over here on the left. And one of the first things that I need to do is set my clock. So I'm going to go ahead and close that so I can see my commands a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and get into my command line interface, and I'm going to press enter a couple times to get started. You can see that it's not secure. I can get right into the switch. I now need to enable to get into my privileged exec mode, and all I have to do is EN to enable it, and I'm in my privileged exec mode. Again, not very secure. We're going to go ahead and set the clock though by doing our simple clock set, following my notes, and right now it is 5:11:00. And it is the 17th day of November of the year 2021. Again, just following my notes on that. I can press my enter key, and if I wanted to see that, I could do a show clock, and there is my clock set. Now, just going down my notes, the next thing we need to do is name a switch. So I'm going to go ahead and need to be in my privilege exec, which I am with the hashtag config T to get in configuration mode, and host name, and I'm going to name my switch 2211, because that is what lab that will be for. And I'll press my enter key. And now I can see that it is called switch 2211. I'm going to stay in config mode because the next thing that we have to do, I bet you I will need to be in config mode, and that's to secure a console line password. All right, and secure that. So I do need to be in config mode, and I'm going to go ahead and type in my line console 0, enter. And you can see that my config has now changed to config line, and according to my notes, that's what I need. Password, and this is where I have a note that says key pass there. So I'm going to go to my key pass, make sure I'm in lab 2211. This is my switch 2211, and there is my password for it. So I'm going to double click it and click over here. I only have a few seconds to paste that in. And you can't use Control V to paste in on the command line interface. You have to right click and paste. And when do we want that password? That's going to be for our login. So make sure you do that at login. All right, and I'm not going to exit it because I'm going to come down to the next part of my notes because I want to encrypt that password. And I don't want to be in the config line. I want to just be in my config mode. So I'm going to go ahead and type in exit. And that brings me back to my config mode. And I'm going to type in service, spacebar, password, TAC, encryption. And press my enter key. My password is now encrypted. If I want to see that password encrypted, I could do a show run, but I have to do that from the privileged exec mode. So I'm in my privileged exec mode, show run. And if I press my spacebar down a little bit, there is my password. It is encrypted. I don't see it in plain text. Wonderful. Very secure. So let's go ahead and we now are going to move right along our notes. And we are going to go and secure our privileged exec mode where we have more options to do here. And so we want to make sure only certain people have access to it. And I need to do a config T first. I forgot to do that. So config T. I'm in now configuration mode. I'm going to enable secret. And right there it asks me to put in my password. I'm going to rely on my key pass to keep track of all my passwords. I double click that. If I see my green thing going down, I only get so many seconds. Let's see if I can beat the clock, and right click and paste. And it looks like I have. And I'll press my enter key. And I misspelled enable. Well, that happens sometimes. So I'm going to transpose the E and the L. And we'll try that again. And we now have that configured. All right, so I'm going to stay there. We're going to check out that in just a second, but while I'm in my config mode, I want to make sure I put in a banner. So this banner kind of lets people know, hey, this is a secure system, only authorized access only. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight my notes here, and I'm going to Control C. Again, I need to be in config T mode, which I am. And I'm going to go ahead and right click and paste that in the terminal. There's my banner, message of the day. This is a secure system, authorized access only. And I want to go ahead and put in my name here. So, and I'm going to be asking you to put in your name, students. So that way we know who put that banner in there. I'm going to go ahead and press my enter key. And I'm going to move along my notes. And we now need to set an IP address so we can communicate with the switch. And we're going to go and we want to do that with a virtual local area network so we can access it from anywhere in the world using software such as PuTTY or TerraTerm and those. So we need to be in our config mode, which we are. And we are going to type in interface, spacebar, VLAN, spacebar 1. And when I press my enter key, you can see that I'm in my config if you will, and yes, that is where I need to be, looking at my notes. IP address, and now I'm going to head on over to my key pass, and I am in my switch 2211. There is the IP address that I selected. I'm going to go ahead and right click and choose paste. Now I also need to hit my space bar and type in my subnet mask, which is 255.255.255.0. and press my enter key. Now I want to also make sure I put in the no shutdown as well. So that's very important. So that way our VLAN never shuts down and we can always access it from anywhere in the world. All right, so I'm still in my config if mode. I'm going to go ahead and exit that. And now I'm in my config, and let's see what we have to do after that. I'm going to come back and verify that here in just a second. I'm going to choose my NVRAM because I believe I need to be in my config mode when I do this. And no, I do not. So cool. I'm going to go ahead and exit. And now I'm just in my privileged exec mode. And the short version is a student taught me this. So it's cool. I love learning shortcuts. So thank you, students, for letting me know that. Is copy, run, start. And that's short for copy, running, tac, config, spacebar, startup, tac, config. All right, copy, run, start. And I'll press enter, and it asks me for the destination file name. I'm good with that, and it will do that for me. So now I want to go and do a couple things. One is I want to verify my address, and that is a command at the privileged exec mode that says show IP interface brief. And I'll press my enter key, and I'm going to press my space bar. I see that I have a password, or excuse me, a IP address on my VLAN 1, and it is in the upstate. Excellent. I'm going to go ahead now and do a show run. And this command will let me see that I have my privileged exec mode password encrypted and enabled. I'm going to press my space bar a few times and come down to the bottom. I have my IP address for my VLAN right here and my subnet address. I have my banner of the day from Mr. Lang. And I have my password here for my console line encrypted. All right, very cool. So switch for my lab 2211 is set up. It's secure. I have an IP address. I can communicate with it. I'm going to go ahead and close this now. And while I'm in 2211, I'm going to go ahead and configure my PCs with an IP address as well. So I'm on my PC number 1, going to desktop, IP config, and I want that static address. And so I'm going to head on over to my KeyPass. And PC1, I'm just going to double click my IP address that I have there and right click and paste. And I'll press my enter key and it will automatically give my subnet mask. I don't need to hit save or anything. I can just hit close on that. And I'm going to repeat that for PC2, desktop IP config. Head on over to KeyPass, double click my next one there. And you know what? The Control V does work in the config mode for IP addresses, so that's a bonus. PC number 3, desktop, IP config, head on over, PC number 3, double click the IP address and not the password, and enter, and we have a subnet mask assigned. You know what, I want to double check that I have my subnet mask. I think I might have clicked on it a little too quick there. And make sure that I have my, and now I am doing something I don't want to do. Let's try that again. IP config, and yes, I do have a subnet mask. Awesome. And last PC, number 4, desktop, IP config, and here is my IP address, number 4, and paste it. And as an IT professional, you guys will come up with kind of the IP addresses for specific labs with specific numbers related to that, and that's great. All right, and so obviously I have 1 for PC number 1, 2 for 2, 3 for 3, 4 for 4. All right, and we'll see how we do that with our next PCs in lab 2213. So I'm going to kind of scroll over in my packet tracer, and I'm now going to go ahead and switch from my lab 2211 over to lab 2213. Again, I already have gone in and made up some of the information that I would need for this lab. And I'm going to click back on my switch and command line interface. I'll press enter a couple times, and it is not secure, so I can do enable to get into my privileged exec mode. I'll bring this over to the side a little bit and then start jumping to my nodes. I need to set the clock. So let's go ahead and type in clock set. Just need to do this in the privileged exec mode. Don't need to be in config T. And it is now 5:22:00. And the day is 17 of November. And it is the year 2021. I'll press my enter key. And now I'm going to go ahead and name my switch. So we'll come over here, and we need to be in config T mode. So we'll go config T, and now we're in our config mode. And I'm going to go ahead and type in my host name. And this one is switch 2213. And I'll press my enter key. And now I have 2213 there. All right, I'm not going to exit because I'm probably going to need to be in my config mode for my console line, and it looks like I do need to be there. So I'm going to go line console 0 to set up our password and password spacebar. I'm going to head on over to KeyPass. I will double click on my, again, make sure you are very vigilant about what password you're using. This is for my console line here. And I wish I could right click, or excuse me, Control V there, but I can't. I have to right click and paste. And it is in plain text right now. That's no bueno, but we will change that. And I do want that password during my login. And I'm going to scroll down. I'm not going to exit. I do want to make sure that's encrypted. I don't need to be on the config line. So I'm going to choose exit once, and that brings me back to the config. And I'm going to type in service spacebar password tag encryption. And so if somebody knows a shortcut for that, hey, I'm always about shortcuts, so let me know. All right, so moving right along, our notes, we're going to go and secure our privileged exec mode because only certain people in our IT department need that information. And so we're in our config mode already. So enable secret and our password there. So we'll head on over to KeyPass. There is my privileged exec password right here. I'll double click that. Head on over, right click, and paste. I see it in plain text, but hopefully that will change soon. We won't be able to see that once we get into the actual console line. All right, so I'm not going to get out of config mode until I need to. Let's see where we're at. Our banner, our message of the day. So we do need to be in config mode for that. So I'll stay right there, and I'm going to highlight that, copy it, come on over, paste it. And again, I do want us to put in our first and last name. So, I need to use my arrow keys. There we go. And I'd just like to put in a tilde and Mr. Lang. All right, go outside of my string and press the enter key. And we have our message of the day. And now we're going to set up an IP address so we can communicate with it. And so we need to be in our config mode, which we are, interface VLAN 1, enter, IP address, spacebar. We're going to go grab our IP address that we set up beforehand. Again, a lot of professionals IT professionals will map out what they want their IP addresses before they actually sign it. So they get a clear roadmap of that. We also need our subnet mask, so don't forget that. All right. And again, we do not want it to shut down. So make sure you look at your notes before you do all that. We'll press our enter key. No shutdown. Awesome. Press the enter key, and there we go. So let's head on over to our notes and see. We need to save it to the NVRAM. We'll verify that here in a second. So the NVRAM, again, saves this information to its memory. Very important to do that. We do not need to be in this mode. So I'm going to do a Control-C to quit and get back into the privileged exec mode and type in copy, run, start for our NVRAM to be saved to the system's memory. All right, and that's about where we're at. So let's go ahead and do a verify our IP address by doing a show IP internet interface brief. Show IP interface brief. Enter. And spacebar will bring us down to see all the different ports in our switch, and there we have it. I also want to do a show run, and our show run shows us that we have our host name. We changed it to switch 2213. This is our privilege exec mode. It is encrypted now. It is not the actual real password. And if I press my space bar to go down, here's all of our ports. And here is our interface VLAN IP address with a subnet mask. Here's our banner of the day with our first and last name at the end of it. And our console line password encrypted, so it's not in plain text. All right, so we have done really good. So now, if we exited this, all right, and press our enter key, you can see that to get into the system, hey, this is a secure system, authorized access only. I'm the administrator by me. And I would have to put in my password to get into the console line. So heading over to here, I could double click my password for the console line and right click and paste. You don't see it, it's there. All right, I am now into the switch. If I want to get into my privileged exec mode, it is asking me for a password. I can double click in key pass, right click and choose paste, and now I am in my privileged exec mode. Again, you're only going to give certain people in your IT field these passwords to get into these different modes, because the console line, you can only do so many things. The privileged exec, you can do more. All right, so we have that set up. I'm going to go ahead and close that now. I'm going to go ahead and move this over here because I need to configure my PCs with IP addresses. And I didn't show you before, but we do have notes on that, configuring PCs with an IP address. And it is telling us to click on your PC. I can do that. I'm in 2213. It is then telling us to click on the desktop. All right. IP config. Make sure we're on static, which we are. And I'm going to go ahead and double click on my IP address for this lab and paste it in with a Control V. We can do that here. And again, I have a different structure. I have 192.168.2.1. All right, 2 being different from my other lab where I was using 1.1. And if I press my tab key or enter, it gives me my subnet mask. I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'll go to my next PC, number 2. And I will go into the desktop mode, IP configuration according to my notes, and double click the IP address and paste it in with a Control Victor and enter or tab key, up to you, and there we go. I'm going to go ahead and click on my PC 3, desktop, IP config, double click it here, number 3 at the end of it is my naming structure, and paste it in, tab key, subnet mask is entered. And last but not least, we have our desktop IP config, and we'll double click this one and we'll paste it in and tab key, and now I have a subnet mask. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and full screen my packet tracer here, and we have all of our devices kind of set up now, but we need to be able to communicate with them, so we need some wires to connect them. We don't have any Wi-Fi addresses, we don't have any of the Wi-Fi devices, so we need to go to our cable, and we're going to use a copper straight through. It's an Ethernet cable. We're going to click on PC, and we're going to go to our fast Ethernet. I'm going to jump to my switch, and I'm going to go to my fast Ethernet 01 since I'm on PC number 1. I need another cable, so I'll click on that, PC number 2. Fast Ethernet, switch. I'm going to jump. You can see 01 is not available anymore. I'll put it on 2 for computer 2. And we're going to go and choose another copper Ethernet cable, a straight through cable, fast Ethernet, switch, 3. And one more time for PC number 4, fast Ethernet, and there we go. We also need to do that for our lab 2213, so I'll grab a cable, fast Ethernet, and as we see some more motherboards having more than one Ethernet port on them now, but these just have the one Ethernet port. And you can see these are kind of old PCs, maybe because they have, it looks like the CRT monitors for cathode ray tubes that have red, green, and blue lights in them to give us our pixels. Those are old school, so kind of cool. I have a couple of those monitors at home. And we have number 4. So we have cables all connected now. All right, and they're working on coming online, going to the switches. So let me go ahead and click on this switch one time, which is kind of cool. If I go to physical, I can see the actual back side of it. And if I go to my command line interface and press my enter key, it's asking for my password to get in. I can get in right through here. So let me go ahead and get to my 2211. Here is my console line. So I'll paste that in and press my enter key. And if I then choose enable, it's going to be asking me for that password, and I'll go into here and paste it in. And now I'm in my privileged exec mode. If I do a show run, all right, I can see my passwords, but I also see all my ports, all right, and my passwords. What I should have done, and I apologize for this, is do a show internet brief, and I believe that's what it is. Let me check my notes real quick, and that's back into my configuring a switch and verifying the IP address, and that's show IP interface brief. That's what I should have done. So let's try that. Show IP interface brief. And you can see now that my ports 1, 2, 3, and 4 are up. I've got things connected to them. All right, if I press my spacebar, I also have my virtual local area network, my VLAN set up with my IP address, and they are both up as well, so I can communicate with them. All right, so that's very cool. Let's see if we can ping our switches and PCs. So I'm going to go to my PC number 1. I'm going to go to my command prompt, and looking at my notes, let me pull those back up. Configuring a PC, pinging a PC. So in my command prompt, which I am already, I'm going to type ping and then the IP address of what I want to ping. So I'm going to start with my switch. So I'm going to be in 2211, which I am, and my switch's IP address is right there. I'm going to double click it, right click, paste. Oh, I think I missed it. Paste. And press my enter key, and I'm now trying to ping my switch. Can I send information to it and get an echo response back? Usually we get timed out the first time, sometimes we don't, but you can see that I did successfully ping that. I now want to ping, so I'm going to press my up arrow, and I'm going to change this to my PC. So it is just 1.1 there, 192.168.1.1, and that's this right here. And so let's see. Well, you know what? That's its own PC. Let's try to ping the PC next to me. So 2. And so I am trying to ping from this computer this information going through the switch to the computer, back, and getting an echo response. And you can see that I have. If I go up and go to 3, I can ping my PC number 3. All right, so pretty cool, and I bet you I can do 4 as well. But while we're testing it out, let's see if we can ping PC number 4. Again, as an IT professional, one of the things you want to do if something's not working right is first of all see if your hardware devices, your end devices and intermediary devices are on the network, and try to ping them. All right, and so let's go ahead and go over to my Lab 2213, and I'm going to go ahead and go into my switch command line interface, and I'm going to press my enter key a couple times. I'm in my privileged exec mode, so I'm going to do a show. I bet you I can do an up arrow. Let's see if I can. No, I can't. Show IP interface brief. And again, if you need your notes for that, you can. You can see that I have my ports. I'm on my switch 2213 and my lab 2213. Ports 1, 2, 3, and 4 are up. Awesome. I have wires connected to them, and my VLAN is connected with an IP address, and they are up as well. All right, so really cool. So now let's go ahead and ping. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to my PC number 4 now and go to my command prompt and ping, and I'm going to ping my PC number 1. So I'm going to look at my IP address if I need to refresh my memory, and my PC number 1 is this right here, 192.168.2.1, and so I'll paste that in, press my enter key, and let's see if we get an echo response. And we do. We're communicating with that end device. Let's go ahead and change this from 1 to 2, see if we can ping that one. And we can ping that one as well. So up arrow, we'll go back to number 3 and see if we can ping that. I'm going to go ahead and close that. The important part now is to make sure that we make a backup of our device's configuration settings. Again, we have KeePass here. There's a lot of different methods that people use to keep their passwords and their IP addresses and everything for their labs and their rooms, but we need to make sure we back it up. That is so important in IT. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and close my KeePass, and I actually have auto save set up to where it will save it automatically. And I am going to minimize this. Don't need that open right now. I can close that. I can close that as well. And I'll minimize. I got a few different things open here. We'll minimize all that. So I do want to go, and here is where I have my KeePass file, and my students know where they save their KeePass file, or at least I hope that they do. And I'm going to go ahead and plug right now in my USB drive. All right, I don't want to save my passwords to the cloud. That is not good at all. I want to make sure that I save it to an external device that I can take, put in a safe somewhere, and have that. And so here is my UMP for my username and passwords. And I use software on my flash drive that will automatically open up my KeePass without installing the KeePass software on a computer. So that's the file that I need to replace. I can see it here. So I'm going to right click and choose copy. Now I did this a little bit ago just to test this out, so you can see that my date modified is at 5:44 p.m. on 11/17, and 11/17 here it was done at 3:12. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on this, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to paste it, and it's going to ask me, hey, do you want to replace it? Yes, I do. And now I can see that my password is updated to 11/17 at 5:44 p.m. And that is crucial. I'm going to go ahead and close or just minimize that. And I do not have my KeePass open right now. I don't have that software open. I'm going to double click this, and using the software that we downloaded onto our flash drive, I can put in my master my password. Well, that's embarrassing. Make sure my caps lock key is not on, and put in my password, and there it is. I just want to verify. Yep, I know this is my updated because I changed my IP address from 252 to 253, but here's my backup of my IP addresses, my passwords, and everything. So very important in IT. We talk about CIA, and the A is availability. If things go down where we have our passwords stored, do we have a backup? And yes, we do. So thank you guys for staying with me for this lab and going through my notes with me, my packet tracer with my couple other my couple labs that I've set up. We're going to work further on setting up a router so we can communicate between labs, and we'll learn a little bit about that as we move along. So look forward to your lab and you guys setting it up and telling me a little bit about your setup. Have a great one.